Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So let's start. So this project is my PhD project. So this is what I'm willing to talk about and study in the next, let's say, hopefully 2 years. So let's hope that not a lot of changes occur in the meantime. So what I intend to do, and this is the justification, is to place Portugal and to talk about the Atlantic and the Arctic and their interconnection and climate change, because it is really, as we know, hot topics in the 21st century. And so we know that talking about the oceans and talking about climate change is talking about globalization. So they are transnational issues that affect us all. And this is why I consider that there is some originality in this topic, because Portugal can be a plausible actor in that region, and also to make the nexus between climate change, oceans, and security. The conceptual and theoretical framework for this research is to link in a pyramid the green theory, human security, and maritime security that I will explain a little bit later. And then the methodology obviously will be to try to present some scenarios through the scenario thinking, specifically a regional scenario presentation. So not being someone that is looking into a crystal ball and try to find out what can happen in the future. Obviously, it is based on reports that I will mention later also. And then in order to be able to try to confirm those scenarios, I will send some questionnaires recurring to the DeFi exercises to some persons that I will list also later on. So the main question of this research is try to explain which are the challenges of maritime and human securities in the North Atlantic and the Arctic Ocean, respectively, and why this places Portugal in the Arctic in the 21st century. Obviously, it is not possible to answer to this question without having other questions to support this. So this is why I intend to also explain what will be the contribution of Portugal in the Arctic, what does it mean to be in the Arctic, and how to be in the Arctic. And so it will be possible to answer to that also with early conclusions. So talking about climate change, oceans, and security in the 21st century means that we need to understand, first of all, the importance of the Arctic, not only as a regional topic, but also included in what is the Earth system and how it affects us all related to the climate change. So there is something new that I want to bring into this research, is that natural sciences are also important in order to understand social sciences, and that climate change has consequences, as you know, and as we can see at the geopolitical level in different regions. So this is what I want also to approach. It is also relevant to understand the importance also of the oceans within the Earth system and how they are all related. And Portugal, being a country that has been able to interlink the different oceans, it looks like the one that is missing is the Arctic. And obviously trying also to interlink all that with security, specifically maritime in the context of the Atlantic, and human security in the context of the Arctic, and how this all affects Portugal. So there is a correlation of topics that I want to bring in. And for that, as I said, what I call a trinity or a triad is to interlink the green theory that has to do also is related to climate change. So I wanted to bring something new also, and not to focus only on the mainstream theories. I wanted to bring a different insight related to the hot topic of climate change, obviously, and try to match the three topics related to the non-traditional security that, as you know, after the Cold War, there was this shift of moving from the traditional security to the non-traditional security, trying to place the persons at the center of the focus of attention and not being a state-centric approach. So what does it mean to talk about challenges in the Atlantic and the Arctic? For the Atlantic, It has to do with maritime security, and here we need to understand what are the threats and what are the risks. And when we talk about threats, it means that we have the situations that are already occurring in the global south and that Portugal has already experienced. And that is why I consider that it can help in the North Atlantic with the transposition of those threats and risks in the North Atlantic linking to the Arctic Ocean with the new maritime routes, as we will see. So the threats are considered to be the proliferation, armed proliferation, and we have also illegal migration, and the risks are more related to what can pollute and have impact on marine environments. Regarding the human security in the Arctic, obviously we need to understand that the direct impacts are interrelated. So if we have climate change, it means that the ice is melting, and if the ice is melting, then there will be the sea level rise. And this affects obviously Portugal also in its coastal areas. Regarding and the thawing permafrost, that is also relevant. Regarding the indirect impacts, it is related to the changes in biodiversity and ecosystems that will affect also not only the indigenous peoples of this area, but us all anywhere, because it changes our way of life. So this is relevant to understand that what happens in the Arctic doesn't stay in the Arctic. And due to that, Christian Berger, the expert of maritime security, has defined what he called a matrix, where he explains why there are 4 components that are related to maritime security and that shall be considered. And because also I shall remind you that climate change has been considered a threat multiplier by the United Nations in 2009. And so he considers also that within his definition of maritime security, human security is part of it and shall be considered. As for Thomas Hausen, Andrew Thomas Hausen, that has the same idea, having a different approach and being more specific regarding the 7 components of the human security, while Christian Berger utilizes the broad definition or name of this approach. And what is it when we talk about the identification? It is a normal process that oceans have, that is current waters go up and down. And in what concerns the identification in the north, it means that the warmer waters and saltier waters are entering the Arctic and are also contributing to the warming of the Arctic Ocean. And so it is also another factor to be aware of in this context. And this is why there will be, in my perspective, a cross of what is maritime security and human security in the North Atlantic and Arctic Ocean intersection. So it is also important to understand the relation of Portugal with the Atlantic. And this is why we have Professor Nunes Breno Teixeira that says that 3 moments exist in this very complex relation between Portugal and the Atlantic. And so the first moment that was only looking at Spain, only land, was not a good option, perhaps for Portugal at the time. But thankfully, we were able to look to water and be able to fight this water barrier and give new worlds to the world. And so that is the second moment of the relationship between Portugal and the Atlantic. What is really interesting, because if sometimes we might think that Portugal was not able to reach the Arctic Ocean, well, it was really close, because before Columbus arrived to what is known today as America, Portuguese navigators were able to reach Newfoundland and Labrador 20 years before him. So it's really interesting. And then in the last period that starts in 1974-75 with the democratization process until now, it is considered the third moment of the relationship between Portugal and the Atlantic, trying to find an imbalance in equilibrium between what is land and ocean, meaning European Union, and NATO, the North Atlantic. So as you can see, these are the coming new routes that take much more less time than the ones that are now being used. And we can see that there is different ways of getting from the Arctic into the North Atlantic. So it can go through different countries and areas. So this is an issue where commonly it is said that China and Russia are already having their radars for a while now. And it is something that is already happening in the south. And this is why I keep thinking that maybe this attention will happen also in the north. And so I put there the image of what can be the continental shelf, the extension of Portugal. So for those who don't know, at the moment, the continental shelf corresponds about 18 times the land territory, Portuguese land territory. In case this extension is accepted, we are still waiting for the answer. This is a very, very long process. It will correspond to 40 times the land territory. So this is a huge, huge area at sea. And this is why Portugal has also the obligation of securing its sovereignty. And being a founder member of NATO, I think there is an added obligation and a collective also action in that sense. So the scenarios and the variables that are to be taken into account for developing the different scenarios, where uncertainty is always present, because scientists are not able to give certainties about anything, obviously, and this is a very volatile world and we never know what can happen. And so this is why I'm also expecting to not take too long by doing this research, because we have many, many reports, global trends reports that are coming out, and so we never know when new ones can be released. And so those are at least for now, so it is not finished, so it is not done yet, so anything can change while I will be developing this research. But for now, this is what I consider, obviously based on, as I said, global trends reports. And now the Arctic countries have been, in the last month, releasing their own defense reports, and they place Russia and China as top priority in their defense. So this is what I will need to take into consideration, and then send some questions with the Delphi exercise to diplomats, persons in the government, scientists, academics, in order to have their insights, whether the scenarios that I intend to present will be, I will not say accepted, but at least to receive their insight and analyze if those scenarios make sense. So it is all in the very early stage, but that is what I intend to do, understanding that all is interconnected, and the ocean, Arctic Ocean is now a NATO Arctic, or a NATO Ocean, sorry, and the Arctic region is being now globalized. It is entering the sphere of globalization. So it is not anymore so far away, it is getting really, really closer. And so this is how I expect to answer to the questions. And what it means to be in the Arctic, it means that being an observer in the Arctic Council, it would allow Portugal to be able to be part of the 6 working groups and develop its multilateralism and internationalization as part of its foreign policy. And now, to conclude very quickly, so the mission of Portugal is considered to be inland and not at sea. And so this is what I hope it will happen, not being a research that is a wishful thinking. Obviously, it intends to have practical impact. And the only conclusions is that I expect to see what the new document, the Security National Document, will say regarding the poles, not only about the Arctic, but also all the poles, because the attention is there and it affects Portugal also in many ways. and to see also what will be the document of the new lines regarding the maritime security until 2030 that is being prepared also in order to see if it matches what I think that is Portugal should look north. It is really important. So that's it. Thank you very much.